What's up, moviegoers and true believers? It's the Real Comics Podcast back at you again. It's your host, Voodoo57 here. Along with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Speedy G33. Speedy G, what's up?
What's up, everybody? How are we doing today?
How's it going, man? Good?
It's going good.
It's going good. Yeah, I'd say so. Listen, today we're going to get into a little Netflix movie called Death Note. Now, this movie isn't exactly getting a lot of love right now, but we do have some things to say about it, and we do want to share that with you as much as we can. So this show might be a little short. Wanted to warn you ahead of time. Also, this might even actually be, we're going to go straight into spoilers. We're going to cut off the middleman. We're just going to get right into it. What do you say, Speedy G?
Yeah, there's not a lot to go non-spoiler and spoiler. I think even if we spoil it, it's not going to, make people either not watch it or watch it. So,
yeah, I agree. I would think either you've seen it by now and have formed your own opinion, and if you haven't, you know what? Again, as we always say on this show, watch it for yourself. Whether you are watching us on YouTube or you've downloaded us and you're listening to us on Podomatic, do me a favor, watch it yourself, form your own opinion. But let's gear down the hate. Come on. The Twitter sphere right now for this movie is like, can we use lowercase instead of all caps? Can we do that? What do you say, Speedy G?
No, caps. Believe in it.
Oh my goodness, that was bad. Oh, I'm telling you. All right. Well, let's get into it. Let's give you a little bit of the background here really quick on what we're talking about here. It's a Netflix movie called Death Note. Death Note stars a character named Light Turner, a bright student who stumbles across a mystical book that has the power to kill any person whose name he writes in it. Light decides to launch a secret crusade to rid the town of all of its bad people. So, needless to say, Speedy G, it starts off just like that. Very quickly, book falls from the sky, and the movie gets underway. What were your thoughts and your takes on this movie?
Where to start? Okay, I didn't watch the anime first. This is based on an anime. Well, based on a manga, then it was an anime as well. I hadn't watched any of these things, so this was kind of an experiment for myself. I took it that way, that I'm going to watch something without doing any research, and I know nothing about it, and I have no preconceived ideas like I did with my comic book movies where I get all picky like they changed somebody. So I came in completely not knowing what I was getting into other than the trailers I'd seen and a little bit of banter on the internet, but very little. It didn't hold my attention is the nicest way to say it. There were moments that I peeked up and I was into it, but then there was a lot of moments I felt myself fidgeting, playing with my phone, and just not really into the show. So I would probably say it missed the mark for me is a nice way of saying it.
Very fair, very honest. I'm going to be the opposite side of the coin here. And not just because we probably need one for the show to make sure we have some decent content and we're not raking it over the coals, but there are some things that, in my personal opinion, that I did enjoy about the story. This movie, or film as we'll call it, Netflix original, does have its issues. By far, it really does. To the point where I can't honestly recommend it to anybody, but I would say, as I always have and as we always do on the show, watch it for yourself. It does have some entertainment value. I also did not read either the manga or the anime, but I knew about it coming in because my middle son is a big-time anime fan. And when he heard about it, he's like, Dad, you got to check this out. He was hoping for good things. And as a quick side note, he's going to feel right about the same place I do. And that is, I got some entertainment out of it. I could see where they could go forward with it if they chose to, which I think Speedy G and I both agree that that's probably not going to happen. But I did enjoy it. If I had to give it a letter grade, it's like a C to C minus, where, I found some enjoyment in it. There were some good moments with the plays and the characters. I do like the idea of it, and I think Speedy G, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're both in agreement that if it had one saving grace for us and our show, it was probably William Dafoe as Ryu.
Yeah, I enjoyed him. He was really good. I don't have anything to base him off of, so I can't say if he's took a huge departure from what a fan of, say, the anime would say, but he really intrigued me. He wasn't over the top villainous. He just was kind of there in the shadows, always manipulating, always, playing his games. And the first time he appears, he gave me a little fright. That's the only fright I had in the whole show. He gave me a little bit of fright, but what took me out of the fright? The guy screamed too much. The Nate Wolff, the guy playing Light, it got too much. It was funny. He screamed, and that's cool. But then he kept screaming and screaming and screaming. I'm like, all right, this is getting a little too. It was distracting because he was screaming almost like a girl. And I get maybe in real life, maybe that's how most of us react. But it just doesn't translate well to hear a guy screaming like that on film. I don't know. It took me out of it because I was at that point kind of into it, and I was frightened a little bit. I was like, whoa, this is kind of cool. This is kind of trippy. And so I was into it from that point. It's a little while after that where I started to kind of like lose my interest in it.
Right. Definitely.
But he was good.
Yeah. I mean, he was probably the best part of it. I've heard others say that the girl was probably she was a bit better at her job.
She is really interesting to me. I liked her a lot. Okay. And I know she's nothing like the character in the anime. I did read about that since then. And so a fan may not like where she went, but she was interesting, but her storyline was too obvious. Like I knew how it was going to end up. I knew she was going to turn on him. All that stuff was going to happen. It was laid out too obvious. They didn't do a good job of Twister, but I really liked her. And she reminded me of a young, it's Jennifer Connelly. That's who's Jennifer Connelly, right? Is that her first name, Jennifer? Who when she was young and she did Requiem for a Dream. That's how she was on screen. What's her name? Margaret Qualley or something like that. That's the actress' name. She was mesmerizing. Just the emotion she did with her face without saying a lot just really, kept me glued to the screen. And I'll give her credit for her moments, but it became obvious where she was going. Like she was going to steal the book, obviously, and she was going to turn on him. And I don't know. There was,
Right. And that's just how certain people see it. Because I didn't. I was actually surprised. I was kind of suckered into it. And maybe I think I was just giving it a little bit more space. But let's break it down a little bit tighter than that. Speedy G, give me, and I'll do the same in reply. Give me what you thought went wrong with it directly. What, let's not fill our whole time with it, because we're going to come back with some of the good as well. But tell me what you thought some of the missteps in this movie were.
Okay, it's obvious it shouldn't have been a movie. Yeah. It was fast. It was bam, 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 and that didn't work. And I did the research. There's at least 130 plus issues of this, or episodes almost, of this story. Chapters, I guess would be a better word. So this is a long, drawn-out story that they crammed, and it felt that way. It was just like bam, bam. So there was no development. That's why I say I didn't believe that I knew she was going to turn, because there was no development. They didn't develop a chemistry. They go from just kind of like looking at each other to all of a sudden he's sharing the book with her, to all of a sudden they're dating, to all of a sudden like in that. So you had you felt no connection between them, I guess, because of that. So the speed of the thing was definitely a big deal. I also feel they didn't capture Japanese anime. It was enough for me to know, even though I hadn't seen it, that this is based on Japanese anime and they're not getting it right. So I could feel that too. So those are probably the two biggest things that bugged me about it.
Well, I would agree with you, especially with the fast pace. That was my initial critique of this movie when others were asking me about it, and actually what I posted on my Twitter feed. Way, way, way too fast. You could see where they were sacrificing character development, which, again, I've done some reading about the anime itself. I think at some point I'll go back personally and watch the anime and I'm sure a lot of those empty spaces will get filled in, which led to a lot of people not liking the characters. As an example, I can tell you that our main character, Light, is more, he's more conniving, devious, and smart than he's actually made in the movie. And in the movie, I thought he was smart enough. And what I'm hearing is in the anime, and especially the manga, he is vicious. He's cold and calculated. So when it comes time for tit for tat in the movie, we don't get it all, and it just happens. And so it's too fast and too shocking.
You know what? That's Americanizing. If I were to say, they Americanize it because it feels like a high school drama, and he's acting like the naive, nerdy high school guy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. He's too, I don't know. Like you say, he's not ruthless because he's the picked on nerd.
Right.
So the picked on nerd doesn't know how to be ruthless. So that's a product of them trying to make it a high school drama, and that's what I mean. How they didn't understand anime. Yeah,
exactly. And we're going to talk, and maybe we'll get into that in a little bit here. But when they Americanize things, but that you could clearly see that he's also very popular. He was clearly not the popular kid in this school.
Yeah.
And so according to the anime, he's very popular, very smart, very connected. So you could see where they're missing at least character development on one character. And if you've got 3 characters plus a supporting actor who plays his dad, all trying to make all this work, that's where it kind of fell flat. I mean, the entertainment value, we'll talk about here shortly, is very minimal. That's for sure. If you had to think of one other thing that probably really took you out of this movie, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it felt weird. It felt weird that it was like a global story, but it was localized in Seattle. Do you understand what I mean?
Yep.
That was kind of weird, and it would throw me off. Like, he'd show these global events, and he was messing with dictators all over the world, but then it was really localized in Seattle.
Exactly.
That was kind of weird. And again, maybe that comes across better in an anime. Maybe that comes across better in a drawn out story, but that didn't.
You're right. Let's talk a little bit about the character L. Now, here's, I thought, for me, I was a little bit more split on this character. I wanted to know more about him, in which I know that you do in the anime. L is a detective or a head FBI agent in search of Light and the person, or at least in for the person who is in charge of committing all these crimes, because they do go on a bit of what you would necessarily, I'm not sure if you call it a crime spree or a hate spree. They do find some bad people, and they end up putting their names in this book and taking them out one by one, and they're doing that fairly methodically. But
is that a crime though?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is it a crime spree?
Is it a crime to write down a name in a book?
Yeah. But then
I mean, I guess if you know it's going to kill him, but still, I wonder if that's a crime.
Exactly. But see, we never even got to that point. We never, all that happened was it was sought as vigilante justice. So with vigilante justice, that in itself is a crime. You can't take the law into your own hands. And maybe that's where I got a little entertainment value of it. But L, what did you think of the character L?
He was interesting. I mean, I have nothing to base on these characters, so I'm watching them. But, he was kind of interesting, the way he jumped up on the seat, and, the way he would sit there, and very anime. Like, you could see that. And that's why I meant how, even though I hadn't seen the anime, I knew I was watching something that was based on anime.
Right.
Just, that's not the kind of character that you're going to get on your average American story.
Exactly.
It felt very anime. So.
Yep, and then L himself actually speaks Japanese in the movie itself. It's a way to communicate to his valet, I guess you could call him. There's a guy that just kind of his manservant. He tends to his every need and his obsession and need for sweets and sugar. So, okay, we've talked a little bit about the bad. We've talked a little bit about some of the characters. If the show itself had some saving graces, or something that at least made you perk up in your seat or pay attention a little bit more within your boredom, Speedy G? Where could you look? Are there any saving graces for you whatsoever?
The girl that played Mia, Margaret Qualley, or I'm not even sure how to pronounce her name, but she, to me, was a bright spot when she was on screen. She did a good job. She was interesting to me, much more interesting than Nate Wolff was. He was not interesting at all. There were moments with Elle that weren't bad, and of course, William Dafoe's performance. So I guess there were some performances, but overall the story was not very interesting to me, and that's where I guess I fall.
Right.
I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, the rules are not explained very well to us. That's another thing. The rules of the book are not, they're kind of explained after things happen. Like, oh yeah, by the way, that rule means I can do this, and it's already happening. It's not like, I don't know, there was no setup, again, going back to it being fast. So it felt like they were just making it up as they went, which they weren't, because that's not the way the real story goes. It's not made up as they went. It's very meticulous, and
right.
it's wits. So yeah, I guess those would be my two main things that I liked.
If I saw some saving graces in this thing, I think that the way it was filmed, I know that really doesn't lend anything to the story, but only because, unfortunately, I do believe that while the idea and the premise of the Death Note book and its death god, Ryu, is an amazing idea, the story served no purpose in, like you said, way too fast. But some of the camera shots were interesting. It did seem they tried to emulate some either anime shots or comic book style shots in this film with their particular angles and use of light. A lot of red and blue flashes, and then they used the cop lights, I think, a little too much in this, but I mean, it's still very interesting. And one other saving grace too, I'm not sure I remember the guy's name, but it's the guy that plays Light's dad. The guy that plays Light's dad is an actor. He's a character actor. He's been around for quite a bit, and he was a here we go. Shea Wigham. He was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was the first person to play one of Peggy Carter's subordinate, or bosses is what the word I'm looking for is. So, it's he may be a saving grace. Some of the acting was quite good. The kid who played Elle was quite good. I unfortunately don't think the material was there for him. So, yeah. Anyway, what's next? Any thoughts? Further views? What do you think? Go ahead.
One of the big things is obviously there was a lot of backlash before it even began because they didn't cast an Asian to play these roles.
Right.
And I don't think Asians in those roles would have made any bit of difference, because it's the way the story was told. The choices of how they went to tell the story, like I said, it was more like a high school teen drama with a bit of horror, that I think it wouldn't have mattered if they had cast Asian and Americans to play this role. I really don't think it would have made any difference. It still would have had the same exact problems that it has. So, there are other live versions of this that do have Asian actors, and they're, that were released. There's been a television series. There's musicals, live action musicals of Death Note. So there's been a lot of interpretations of this manga with live actions. So I think it was okay to do this, like an Americanized version. The problem is they did a bad Americanized version, and we still don't know how to interpret this original material yet. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Speedy G. When it comes to translating what they've done in Japan as far as anime or comics, I think the closest we've ever come, and even then they Americanized it so much. I don't know how many people know that, but the Tom Hanks movie with Paul Newman, Road to Perdition, was actually a Japanese anime.
Manga. I don't think
manga,
that's ever been an anime, but it's a manga.
Or excuse me, but a manga.
And I've read that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably about the closest they've come to equating something with the same, a similar storyline. But again, it's far from what the manga was. I know that Ghost in the Shell missed the mark. And I'm sure there are others that we could discuss here.
Well, a lot of others where they just haven't did it. But yeah, I'd forgot about Road to Perdition. That is a pretty good retelling of the essence of the story in a scenario that fits an American culture, you know, because in the original, and I can't remember the name right now. I don't know if it's Wolf Cub or, it's going to drive me nuts that I can't remember it. But, yeah, the essence of it, you know, he was a samurai, and in our modern version, he's a contract killer for the mob. You know, it really works, and that's a great example of telling something that's very American and very, you know, Western with an Eastern story, and that works. That's not what happened here. I think they tried to keep very much the Eastern story, but not enough, and failed at it. But I don't think it's the actors, and I really want to put that through, because there's so much right now thing about casting. You have to cast this, you have to cast an Asian for an Asian role, you have to cast a Hispanic for a Hispanic role, and all a lot of that's going on now. Well, I want representation. I do also want the right performer to get the right performance. Right. And the problem, again, I'm going to go back, it was the choices made in the writing room. So maybe that's where it should have been Asian writers. Right. What it should have been.
That is probably the perfect comment. That and the other. You and I spoke about this earlier. We don't want to get too much into the whole topic of whitewashing in general, because, you know, we've got lead stories out there today that involve the Hellboy movie, and you and I can go round and round and delve into a deep, dark area that the Twitter sphere is just going insane for right now. And what you and I want are, you know, I definitely want, you know, Voodoo 57 wants is a good movie with a good story. I almost, you know what, if you can find the right actor and he's a good actor, they can fill it if the story's good, if the writing is good. And I think you're right on the mark. The writing here fell short. And again, with it being so rushed, I didn't have time to care about the characters, and by the time they did, they were off screen. This thing is about 140 minutes plus. It didn't even make the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
So that was
maybe they ran out of money. I don't know what their budget was.
Right.
You know, it is Netflix, and maybe they didn't have enough budget. I mean, it's all going to fall on the director's lap. Okay? Right. But from a standpoint of shots, he had some cool shots. And like we said, how do you pronounce the bad guy's name? Raikou or I don't know.
Ryu.
Okay. Yeah, my anime is not good. And
for all I know, I'm pronouncing it wrong.
But he did a really good job of introducing this character by keeping him in the shadows the way he did and do it. Those were some great cinematic choices. But he signed off on this script. You know, this is the story he chose to tell, and it was lacking all over the place.
Right. Well, you know, one other thing I can tell you is if we want to get into kind of where they go from here, does this die? Does it get buried? Or it's kind of like how I've seen it. I've tried to put a positive spin on something that everybody is really not liking right now. And the only positive that I can bring out of this thing, other than the fact that I at least got some entertainment value out of it, is that maybe it's like that first pilot. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
If you turn on your favorite TV show, let's, for example, say The Big Bang, and you watch that first pilot, Penny isn't anything like Penny, and neither are the other characters. That's the pilot episode. It comes on, they put it out, and they go, well, people liked it enough. Now we're going to make adjustments. My only hope is that I don't want it to die yet. They do leave it somewhat open-ended. They could make this a series in one of two ways. They could pick up where they left off and try to make a series out of it, or they could possibly have the book season to season, like I suggested to you the other day in conversation land in somebody else's hands, and then go a whole season with that person having to deal with having this book. I think you could come up with a good idea, but the problem is, as much as I would love all that, you have to find the people who can write the stories.
Here's where you run into the problem with that. And I'm going to compare it to, like, say, an Iron Fist.
Right.
I also had a bad. To do what you would suggest means all original material, because they told the story that's already written. Right. They got to the end of the story. So you're telling now, would people accept an original idea, an original story? If this first one had worked, they would. But it didn't work. So it's going to be hard to sell them on an original story. Where, like, say, Iron Fist, what they can do is they can go grab another version from a different comic, a different run, a different writer, and tell a different story with a better set of writers and a better director or whatever, a better showrunner, and tell a story that is popular within the Iron Fist lore. I don't think you can do a completely original Death Note after failing. I just don't. And by failing, I mean is the bad reviews. Now, let's see if it's failing. That's the other thing. Another thing that gets it made again is let's see what the numbers end up being. So it wasn't liked in the U.S. As we learned with Iron Fist. That doesn't mean it's not disliked worldwide. Let's wait till the numbers start coming in. This could end up being popular. This could end up making Netflix money. And in the end, if it makes money and the guy came in the budget they wanted him to, like, maybe they didn't spend a lot of money on this. It doesn't look like they did, And so they're like, hey, let's make another one. Why not? You want to do another one? Or do you want to get another offer to another director to do another one? None of the actors are so well known that they can't. Well, of course, Defoe, but the other actors are not at a point where they can just turn work down. So it could turn into something else. It's hard, but you're right. I like the television because it's not just a pilot. Season to season, there are very few shows that every season has been good. Probably Breaking Bad is like one of the few. Even Game of Thrones has had little, blips where it hasn't quite hit. Walking Dead hasn't been perfect. There are some seasons that people just hate of Walking Dead,
Yes, there are.
So it just goes to show with it. And again, when I would argue this with people with Iron Fist is this is one season. They can correct and give us a whole new thing the second season. They could also turn around and make a crappy Jessica Jones season, even though we had the first one was great. It's season to season is just, they're different. There's nothing people change, people leave.
Yeah.
So,
well, you were saying earlier though too. Tell me and tell anybody who may be listening a little bit about what you came across when you would like see different things about Iron Fist as opposed to elsewhere in the world. You were saying that like you had seen something.
Oh yeah, like I have a lot of mutuals on Twitter that are from Brazil, and in Brazil, there's no Iron Fist hate. Vin Jones is a god over there. They think he's the greatest Iron Fist ever. They love that show. Anytime they post stuff every day about him. And during Defenders, it was nothing but yay, 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 and all you people quit sending him hate. He's very popular. So it's an example of different parts of the world. In the United States, he's getting hate left and right. And there was a great tweet by someone the other day is let's be honest. If all these people didn't have the hots for the stunt guy who wants to be him, would it really be that much of a deal? They just want to see that guy without his shirt playing the role. They don't even care if he knows how to act.
Right. Interesting.
So
yeah, that's a good take on it, man. I like I said, if I'm looking for saving graces, that's where I'd like to go. Perhaps you're right. Maybe it'll pull better somewhere else, so they'll get enough views and streams of it where they might give it a budget. Something else occurred to me while we were just talking. You were talking about budget, and it's got to be budget because if you think back to the movie itself, they did keep Ryu hidden in shadows. Not that he isn't necessarily probably in the anime or manga, but I was just thinking, I honestly think that if Netflix has a certain amount of budget for the things that they're doing, we also have to remember that new series Bright with Will Smith and is coming out, and I guarantee you they put budget money into that more so than this.
Yeah, but it's Will Smith and David Ayers.
Yeah.
I mean, no, what is? I don't even know the director's name of this. If you want to look it up, like what else has he done besides Death Note? So he's not a heavy hitter, and the lead actor is not a heavy hitter. What is he? Before this, he was in Paper Towns, the one that has Carla Devine, and she's not even in it very much.
Right. Adam Wingard. Adam Wingard is your director's name.
What else has he done off the top?
Let's see.
Anything I might know?
I don't know. Let's see here.
So, I mean, yeah, they gave Will Smith money because it's Will Smith.
Actually, he directed the horror film VHS. I know that was pretty popular. And then he's got one called The Guest, You're Next, and VHS 2 are the few that I see on here. There's 21 total director's credits here as well. Oh, wow. Guess what? He's handling Godzilla versus King Kong.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And he did the Blair Witch.
Okay, so
2016.
He's done a lot of small budget things. And that,
right.
That makes sense because the budgets are smaller and he knows how to make choices that make interesting things, like having the monster be that way off screen.
Right.
And he made it interesting. So credit for that.
That's for sure. All right, Speedy G, you and I have given our thoughts and views on this. I think we both wish, I think I can speak for both of us, we wish there was more for this. I know there was for me. That's not to say, again, I did get a little bit of entertainment out of it. Speedy G, I'm sorry you lost that hour and 40 plus minutes that you will not get back.
No, I won't. It was, to me, it was an experiment. That's how I took it, because I always go into these comic book things knowing too much, and unfortunately, sometimes that does ruin certain things because I just know too much about the world and everything that goes on in comic books that I nitpick, and I had nothing to nitpick. So I was hoping that maybe I'd be pleasantly surprised because my bar was so low, but it obviously wasn't low enough.
All right. Well, like I said, and we always say it here on the show, and I'm sure I've beaten it to death. Catch it for yourself, decide for yourself. Don't let the hate necessarily keep you from it. If you've got nothing to do on a Sunday night or something like that, we're out of Thrones. We got a little while till, Walking Dead and some of those other shows that you may be watching kind of hit the air again. It's an hour and 40 minutes of your time. Say what you think. Let us know. Actually, if you're watching the video, you catch us on the podcast, you see us on Twitter, however, just let us know what you thought about it. We already had a couple of comments, Speedy G, on your Twitter feed when we announced that we would be reviewing this show. They kind of made me laugh. The Tracy Morgan gif going, no.
Yeah.
That made me smile. So, all right, Speedy G, I think it's about time to wrap this one up, unless you've got anything further to say on the subject itself.
No.
Unfortunately not. Okay, if you're listening to this, don't get too bummed out. This is what we do. This is what we're here for. We're going to share our honest thoughts and feelings on things.
Not everything's going to be special.
That's right. There's not rainbows every day. That's right.
I watched it so you don't have to.
Oh, that's the way you could look at it. I like it. We'll take that. All right. It looks like we're about done here. If you're listening to us on Podomatic or you're catching us on YouTube, say hi. Thank you. We appreciate it. That's for sure. As always, be your own hero. Speedy G, I'll catch you later.
Aloha.